Now it begins to make sense. Now I know all of us have seen television. We've seen the movies. Yeshua is walking along and John says, "Oh, behold the Lamb of God which takes away the sin of the world." Then he gets baptized. No. If you read one gospel record, you can come up with some really loony ideas. You have to read all of the records and read them carefully and find out actually what's being reported and get Hollywood out of your mind. Now, what happens at that point? Behold the Lamb of God which takes away the sin of the world. And as I mentioned, Peter, John, and Andrew join up and spend the night with him. The day is far spent, and then the following morning they meet up with Philip. They get in the boat with them. The only option is to go around the swampy side of the Kinneret, which, you know, they wouldn't do it. They just get in the boat with them. He'd been fishing all night. Then they join up with him, and they go back to Bethsaida. And when they get there, then Philip found who? Nathanael. And then they told Nathanael, "We found the Messiah. He's from Nazareth." And he said, "Wait just a minute. You know, have you read the scriptures? Nothing good comes out of Nazareth." And he said, "Come on, come and see." Well, we won't detail exactly what happened with Nathanael at that point, except Yeshua tells him something that can only be known by divine revelation. And Nathanael says, "You are the Messiah." He said, "Because I said that, you haven't seen anything yet." And then it says that after 3 days, or the third day, that is when they were in Cana of Galilee for a wedding. Now, what's happening at this wedding is that Yeshua's mother, Miriam, obviously has some kind of responsibility there, because when they come to the wedding, then she told Yeshua they have run out of wine. And the King James is a little difficult here, because it says, "Woman, what have I to do thee?" That's really not right at all. It's more like ma'am. It's not woman. It's not a derogatory term. It's ma'am, what concern is this of yours and mine? My hour is not yet come. My time is not yet come. What is it talking about? When you are invited to a wedding in Israel, you as a guest are required to bring something for the wedding. It's this way in the land of Israel now. The rules have changed a little bit, but still the guests are the ones that are required to bring things. And if you're invited to the wedding, then you have a particular thing that you are supposed to bring, such as wine. And those who are closer in the family, more closely related, they have their time that they're supposed to provide. But when he came, he said, "Wait just a minute. You know, it's not my time. It's not my responsibility." Now, we're going to find out, first of all, that it's a Pharisee wedding, which is going to get interesting right from the very beginning. It's a Pharisee wedding, and I'll show you how we know that. Because his mother finally turns to the servants and says, "Whatever he tells you to do it, and don't question anything, okay? Just do it." Because he said, "Okay, I'll provide wine, but I'm going to do it my way." And it says that there were 6 stone water pots there for the purifying of the Jews. For the purifying of the Jews. What does the term Jews mean in the Gospel of John? The Pharisee religious leaders. That's right, you can search the Torah from beginning to end, and you will never find one single word about stone water pots for purification. This is a pure rabbinic manufactured concept. And the only place you're going to find it is in the Talmud. And the Talmud tells us exactly how these stone water pots are to be used. First of all, these stone water pots are used for purifying water which has been contaminated, and it is not ritually clean. They put water in, contaminated water that's not ritually pure, and they fill it all the way to the top, to the very brim. And then they take ropes and they lower this stone water pot down into a mikvah, which is a pool of running water. And just as soon as the water of the mikvah, the baptism pool, you would think, kisses the water which is at the top of this jug, as soon as it touches it, kisses it, the rabbinic term, then it is immediately brought up, and now it is made clean, ritually pure. According to the Talmud, what makes water ritually impure is if it has the slightest taste of wine. Yeshua sees these 6 water pots of stone. He says, fill them up, all the way to the brim. See, he knows what he's talking about. He knows what the rule is. Fill them all the way up to the brim. Now, take a ladle of this and take it over to the governor of the feast, who is no doubt a Pharisee, and give him some to drink. And as soon as he tasted it, he said, this is the best wine I've ever had. If he knew where that water had come from, where that wine had come from, he would have gone right through the ceiling. Because Yeshua has just defiled the very essence of what these stone water pots are all about. The very first miracle he does is goes right in the face of rabbinic tradition against rules and regulations that the Pharisees had made up of their own accord. And remember, what is the basic foundational commandment of the Torah? Thou shalt not add one commandment to the words that I command you. You shall not diminish one commandment. No one is allowed to add, no one is allowed to subtract. Now they have made up a whole series of rules and regulations about pure water and impure water in these stone vessels and how they are to be used, and Yeshua throws it all right in their face, showing them that they have no authority whatsoever. This is nonsense. Now, it doesn't tell us what happened, but I personally believe that, the word finally gets out where the water came from. And I think that there's a little bit of a scuffle going on. We're going to see this because this is not an isolated incident. It's Yeshua's first miracle, but yet, see, in the Western world, when we read this, we just read right on past it. We don't understand that Yeshua is deliberately violating every man-made rule and regulation that the religious system of his day and time had come up with. We're going to see it as it develops. So this is when this takes place, and what happens after the wedding feast? The next day it says they went over to Capharnaum. They were right here in Cana. It takes nearly a day to get there, and they go down there and they stay for not many days. Why not many days? Because they're going down there for the Sabbath. It's a seaside resort. They're going to rest, and then early the first day of the week, then they are going to leave for Jerusalem. Now, how do we know they're going to leave then, early the first day of the week? Because this year, the Passover is going to begin at sundown on Thursday evening. And so they have got to get from the Galilee up to Jerusalem. And so they can make it by the 12th if they really are on a dead run, but most likely they get there on the 13th. And when they get in on the 13th, remember, the 13th at sunset, that's when the gates of the Temple Mount close. That's why Yeshua gets up there on the 13th before the gates close, and he gets rid of the leaven off the Temple Mount. He drives the money changers. He gets the sin off the Temple Mount before the sun sets, because the temple has got to be cleansed before sunset on the 13th. And so that's how we know when Yeshua is there to get the leaven out of the temple at that point in time. So he drives the money changers and all the animals off the Temple Mount and begins to set things straight right at that point, because at sunset, that is when the Passover is then, we begin the preparation for the Passover. The Passover lamb is actually going to be killed on the afternoon of the 14th, which is going to be on a Friday afternoon of this particular year. This is Yeshua's first year of his ministry. Now, we're going to go back in time just a little bit to what it says in Luke chapter 3, verse 23. Yeshua began being about 30 years of age, and this is referring to the time of his baptism. Now, this is important because I'm going to teach you some chronology here, and what we are going to do is that we are going to find fatal errors in chronology. Yeshua began being about 30 years of age. How do you begin being about anything? The word began is commenced. And, in fact, some of the translations commenced his ministry, and that's accurate. He commenced his ministry being about 30 years of age. That sounds quite general, doesn't it? So here I put a timeline here with 30 years of age right here. And if the word about is the word peri in Greek, which is perimeter, around, or about, then he could be 28, he could be 32. You know, it all depends on how big you want to draw the circle. I've seen people say that he is anywhere from 23 to 37. If he's just about 30 years of age, how big do you want to draw the circle? It all depends on what kind of chronology you're trying to promote. But the word about is not the word peri. Yeshua began Hosea 30 years of age. The word Hosea means nearing or before a point. What is the point? 30 years of age. He is nearing, but before the point of 30 years of age. This is a mathematical Greek construction that you can't get out of. If it said that he was about 29, then you would know that he is nearing but not yet reached his 29th year. However, in this case, the mathematical construction is having not yet reached 30 years of age. He began about having not yet reached 30 years of age. So now we have Yeshua's timeline from when he was born. This is his first year. Now, I know in Western thinking, you count 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, and then on the first birthday, you say that a person's 1 year old. That's not biblical or Eastern reckoning at all. When you are born, it's your first year. Okay? Now, having not yet reached his 30th year brings us down to this end. Right here would be the beginning of his 30th year. But remember, this is before Passover. It's a half year before Yeshua's birthday, right? Yeshua was born in the fall of the year. This is when John, his cousin, was born. And so he was about, having not yet reached 30 years of age, he was literally in the midst of his 29th year when his mikvah took place. Now watch how this plays out. Here is the timeline, 20 before the Common Era, all the way to 36 of the Common Era. And I'm just showing you here that every single block is mathematically described. There's no way for me to fudge the figures if every block that I put up here is mathematically described. From 20 before the Common Era to 36, and there's nothing missing here. You'll notice there is no year zero. Now, it says in Luke 3:1, Yochanan ben Zechariah, John the Baptist, began baptizing in the Jordan in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. So we have a couple of opportunities here. One is Caesar Augustus adopted Tiberius as his son. In the fall of 12 of the Common Era, that is when Caesar Augustus became very ill and Tiberius took over the day-to-day operations of running the empire. It is called the co-regency because Tiberius Caesar ran everything, but Caesar Augustus was still emperor on the throne. Not for long, because 2 years later, in the fall, in the month of August, Caesar Augustus is going to die, and at that moment, then Tiberius is going to take over full time. But right here, using this, first of all, we're going to use this, is in the fall of the year 12, when Tiberius began taking over the day-to-day responsibilities for the empire, and Tiberius is very much linked with Israel, because, of course, the city of Tiberias is named after him. Then we find out that his 15th year is in the winter of 26 and 27 of the Common Era. Now, let's look at the rest of the detail here. Yeshua said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. This is his first Passover during his ministry. And then said the Jews, the Pharisee religious leaders, 46 years was this temple in building, and you're going to raise it up in 3 days? Wait just a minute. 46 years in building, according to Josephus, the temple began its reconstruction under Herod in 19 before the Common Era, and that brings us up to this date. Right here, the temple began its reconstruction. It was year 1 that coincides with 19 before the Common Era. At the other end of this, we see the 46th year of the building of the temple coincides with 27 of the Common Era, which also coincides with the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar.